Welcome to this episode of The Balanced Mind, the podcast where we dive deep into the inner workings of the individuals working within accounting and bookkeeping. And today, your hosts are me, Kim Searle, and Richard Bruin of Progress. Welcome, Richard. I'm very excited about today.
Hi Kim, good to catch up with you again.
Lovely. So we're actually addressing a topic which is increasing in noise around us, which is the use of tech and its relationship with people, humans. And do you want to just explain why we're covering that today? Because I think you were talking about what's happening in your world.
Yeah, I think it's something that probably has become more and more obvious to me as certainly as we've gone through 2024 with all of the firms that we get involved in, the accountants that we talk to. We live in a digital age. We live in an age where technology is advancing rapidly. We've now got AI, flowing through that at an ever increasing pace. So there's lots and lots of things happening. And the dream is that these are all making our lives easier. And I'm not saying that they're not. In one respect, I'm not saying that they're not. If you look at the example is always the kitchen appliances, isn't it? And compare that with 50 years ago, or what have you, and just how processes have certainly been speeded up. But one thing that has increasingly come to the front of my mind, especially towards the latter end of last year, was that the reality in terms of outcomes is different to the dream that we're being sold. Because most firms that I talk to now have adopted the digital age. I wouldn't be talking to a firm that hadn't. They wouldn't want to listen to me. And so, they are stacked floor to ceiling with tech. They've been using digital systems for their compliance for many years now. In most cases, they've now grown. With their production systems, with their marketing systems, with their CRM systems. There's lots and lots of tech in the firm. We're now seeing more and more conversations around AI. We're seeing firms adopting robotics when it comes to a lot of their repetitive processes. These things are happening. But I still go into pretty much every firm and see people who are stressed out, who don't have any time, who are still struggling with their deadlines, who are still struggling to spend the right amount of time in front of their clients, for instance, to do the things that they want to do. They still seem to have the same blockages that they had when they were a manual firm. They've probably got a few less staff, but the blockages are still the same. And one area that almost compounds it now is that whenever they do adopt tech, it actually utilizes more resources because they've got to undergo the training, which is understandable, but then they've got to undergo a whole process of getting their teams engaged and even more so getting their clients engaged. And the whole thing becomes yet another problem and yet another demand on their time. So on the one hand, we have this vision that we should all be sitting back, feet kicked back in the sunshine, doing what we want to do, having the time to do what we want to do to develop our firms or our personal life the way we want to. Just by investing in the tech, we're investing in the tech, but we still seem to be stuck in the same old queues. And it's that interface between the tech world and our human world. Accountancy is a human profession. Always has been, always will be. It's about us and our clients, us and our teams. What tech is supposed to do is to free that relationship up, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not happening, not to the extent that it should be happening. So is that, and I think I'm going to answer my own question here,
And that's okay.
is that the fault of the tech companies because it's still too hard? Or is that the fault of the people, the human side, the accountants and their teams, because they're resistant to it? And it's that, and how do we fix that? How do we sort that out?
I think it's complex, just like people, to be fair, if I'm honest. it reminded me, and you probably heard the same story. When I was at school, secondary school, we were looking at computers because obviously they were the next big thing. And we were told that these computers, so I'm going back to the 70s, these computers were going to come in and we were going to have so much free time we would only be working part-time in effect compared to our parents and ancestors and all that. And it was exciting. And this idea of having more free time was brilliant. And you're right, 50 years on, 40 years on, whatever, depends when I was told. And we are we are in a worse state. Tech needs a lot of attention. And there is something that I remember when I was installing, data networks or, software systems when I was working in the IT tech world, is that crap data in, crap data out. And there is something there was that the solution is built for people to adopt, but exactly are they adopting? And this is almost a much bigger piece of work because you've got to understand what you want that to do and how will that change. So another little story was we had a big dilemma. I was working at Motorola at the time, and they had a choice of operating systems. One that was going to be built specifically for the business, so completely bespoke, or to buy off the shelf packaging to run all the call centers, the data, and so on. The trouble is there was problems with both, and there was a decision that needed to be made. And I think they went, if I remember rightly, that we went with the bespoke. The challenge was there was only one guy who really understood it in the company. And he'd been one of the key people to develop this software program. So if there were changes, either he had to make the changes that impacted not just one part of this. So when you're installing, say, a call center, you may think you've just got to worry about the one person at the desk. You don't. You have to look at the way it's routing round to find that
Hmm.
one person at the desk. And there was a load of other caveats around it. Only certain call handlers would take the call. So there was a lot of complex configuration in the background. And the problem with that is that impacted other things. So he had to look at this complex change requirement and be able to keep up with it. And he was a one man, and he did have a few others. I mean, the business was probably about 200 people at that point. So we're not talking masses, but it was still a big job. Whereas the bespoke, you would have just used their upgrades to keep it up to date. What am I saying here? Because I know I've witted on there. In each of those scenarios, our expectations are not being met as
Yeah.
individuals, as a business owner. We are expecting something that tech is not yet able to manage. They've got to talk to each other. I don't know about you, but when I hear a software talking integration, I sort of melt because I'm like, I have no idea how that works because the integration isn't always thought through or doesn't integrate with what you want to do. I'm on an Apple computer. Not everybody works with Apple straight away. They'll do Microsoft because that's easy, but Apple is an afterthought very often. So I think there's an expectation from the software developers, the dream, and an expectation of what it can do, when it can do it, and how quickly with the human interface. And I think there's a mismatch going on there. Obviously, do the software developers really understand the business?
Hmm.
And does the business owner understand what the requirements are? Because it's so key. There's a lady I've been talking to, she works on the processes to automate into AI. And she said that's so crucial to get that right because you've only got to get in the wrong direction, it causes problems. Hence the need for much more micromanagement of it in the early days. And I think there's a speed thing going on here. And I don't know quite what's behind that. Is that to fear of missing out? Yes, possibly. The idea that in order to get ahead, you need all this tech? Yes, probably. It's being driven by government in some places, MTD, making tax digital. Yes. I think it's a lot more complex than perhaps people realize. And the tech people only see the simple, black and white solution that they've got. Here you go. This will do all the work you want. Will it interface with
Yeah.
that? Will my people understand it? Da, 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 da.
I think it's a good point. I think we're far too we jump into buying the dream far too early. I was talking to a firm uh, last week about that, and that we got onto the subject of their marketing and getting new clients. So not marketing from in terms of their existing client relationships, but targeting brand new clients. And they were running through all of the different things that they could do with their CRM and get their staff to do and what have you. And I said to them, look, I'm not being funny, but what is it that your firm does? What are you? What are you? What's your job? And they went, oh, well, we're accountants. And I went, yeah. So you're not marketing people then? No, no, no. But I said, look, I think it's very important that your business has a marketing strategy. Don't get me wrong. I think it's obviously very important that you target new clients. But
Mm,
why are you doing it? Because you're not marketeers, you're accountants.
mm,
So therefore, your time is best spent you being accountants. That's what you're really good at, isn't it? Why are you trying to do something that you have very little experience in? You're using a CRM system that you still don't fully understand. How effective do you think your marketing is going to be? Are you not better to talk to someone who knows what they're doing? Are you not better to talk to a marketeer, to talk to someone who's got experience with that CRM system? You talk about how you're short of time, but here you are having to invest a load of time to try and train yourself up to do something that you don't do. It's not you. And it's that's they accepted the point. They've gone away and they're talking to a local marketing agency and putting together a really good program.
mm.
Now, yes, there's then a conversation around understanding the firm, understanding the targets and all the rest of it. But that's pretty much what you were just saying there about does the supplier properly understand what we're trying to do here? And it made me think about there's a similar issue here from the tech side of things because the tech companies come to us and say, here's a great solution. It'll do this and do this and do this. And all you've got to do is get your team trained up and then sell it to your clients. But we're not tech people. We're accountants. Why don't you do that? Why don't you bring that into the process? Because I don't, yes, I understand. I get that I need to know how to use it. That's with anything we buy for our firm. But why am I the person who's having to go through all of these? We talk a lot about client education, don't we? And things like, well, why am I the person who's doing that? Because I'm not a tech person. I'm an accountant. If the client
Exactly.
comes back with tech questions, and I think it's almost like it feels like it's becoming part of this issue around accountants losing their identity. Why can't we stand up and go, I'm an accountant, I do accountant things, that's what I'm really good at, that's what I want to talk to my clients about. I need a marketing strand to my business, of course I do, and that will help me do it. And I need a tech strand to my business, of course I do. But do I need to be the person doing that, or should that be all done for me? And I think possibly with the history that we've had, obviously, when tech first started coming into any business, but in this case in the accounting sphere, it was complicated. And we've ended up with some big tech companies providing quite very detailed, complicated solutions into firms. And so we've grown up under accepting that tech was a difficult route, but it was almost like something that stick with it, it'll get better in the long run.
Mm.
I think the environment's changed now. I think AI is having a lot to do with that. There's now a myriad of very small tech companies and individuals in tech, which gives us the opportunity to go to them and say, look, I'm an accountant. This is what I want to do. This is what I need to do. Can you do me a tech solution to that? And they go away and go, yeah, we can do that. So in
And
other
that's
words,
interesting, isn't
it's putting us in control of that relationship rather than being at the beck and call of our tech suppliers. And I just wonder whether that is where there's a light at the end of the tunnel in all of this. Because it is the problem. You mentioned it there, and I know people are going to sigh because I do it every time. But whenever you've got a challenge in your business, you go back to your vision, you go back to your goals. Why am I doing this? What am I trying to achieve here? Do we do that enough when it comes to our tech? Do we go, well, hang
it?
on, I'm doing this because it's the latest upgrade, or it's the latest advice that's come through. Why? Let me just get back to basics. Why am I doing this in the first place? Am I doing it just because I used this tech last year and therefore I want to use it this year and make it a bit better? Because that's not a business solution. let me just remind myself why I do what I do, what my goals are, what am I trying to achieve here? And then it's almost like starting with a blank piece of paper each year. Do I actually need that bit of software anymore? Is that tech company the right tech company for me? Am I trying to, we're almost, tech in itself has become a problem for us to solve invariably by using more tech, when actually we're not in the business of solving tech problems. We're in the business of helping clients and doing accounting things and doing tax things. That's what we do. So it's almost like our priorities seem to have been hijacked by the tech companies.
And I think you're right. So what would you say then um, are tech's responsibilities? Because one of the challenges, and I've mentioned it, working in a smaller organization, Motorola, not the, it was a telco, it was a subsidiary of the wider Motorola, was this idea between bespoke, which is really what a lot of businesses need because their processes won't be exactly the same. There will be some similarities, I get that, but there may be other differences, and the big tech companies who are saying this is the solution, they're telling you what the solution is, and you can purchase bits and pieces or not. What do you think we need the tech companies to start to do to bridge that gap between the needs of the business and the solutions that they have?
Well, we do need them to better understand the accountant's lot, what our days are like and what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
But that's no different to what we've needed from them over the last 30 years, 40 years, whatever it may be. And their track record suggests that they're not great at doing that. One of the things this sounds like I'm anti-tech. I'm not. I work with tech companies and I talk to a lot of tech companies. And one of the things that I would always say to them is that the problem that tech companies have, they get this. They understand that there's a problem, that their customer, the accountant, is struggling to get engagement with their clients. And consequently, they tend to come back and blame the tech company for that. So it's a problem that they do want to fix.
Mm.
But the way that they seem to fix it is to go to 100 different accounting firms who are their customers and go, right, tell us what more you need. And these 100 different accounting firms come back with 150 different things that they think they all need. And then the firm go, okay, right, we'll put those on our to-do list. And then they work their way through. But that's not, we don't need more features. We need something that fits better into our firms and into our client relationships. And that means starting from a different place. And I think that's where we talk to accountants all the time about the need to change their thinking. We need the tech companies to change their thinking. The problem is the tech companies, when they get to that point, go, well, why would we want to do that? We'll just sell direct. I mean, we see it now, don't we? With a lot of I won't mention names, but a lot of the tech companies who started off working with accountants now advertise very directly to the SME marketplace because the accountants are a bit of a pain in the neck, from their point of view, and they're not very good at selling, and that's really what we're interested in. Are they really interested in making the accountant-client relationship better when actually they can cut the accountant out and sell direct?
Mm.
Yeah, and I think there's another firm recently I won't mention it, a tech company. We've worked very closely with accountants the last 2 or 3 years, but they're now going, is this is just too hard? Why don't we just go into an SME marketplace? And they're searching for a different mindset and different sort of person. So I don't.
That is interesting, actually, because I was talking to some people the other day about how selling anything to an accountant is hard
Oh
for
yeah,
because of it is the mindset. They're very busy people. They're running their business. They've got their clients, and people selling to them is not a great thing. And don't get me wrong, I fall foul of that every so often as well. But the trouble is by being turning things like this away, they are missing a trick, aren't they? They're missing out on opportunities to grow and develop themselves, businesses, whatever. But I don't think tech companies are taking the time. So they're not communicating. Maybe it's communication that's the key to this. They're not really engaging. Because I hear you, and again, I've seen that evidence myself with software development where the software is put out, just as it is. Here is your box, and this is what it'll do. Data in here, data out there. And it might be extracting data from other software systems, which is where integration comes in. And then they go out and say, well, what else do you need? And there's a load of lists come back, and then they prioritize and they make those changes. Da, 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 da. I used to do that on networks all the time. And I'm not going to be raising up all the issues that you see with network changes, but they happen, as we saw last year with a certain big company. The point of though is, is how do we make that work together? You're right. How do we bring together the people creating it and the people using it? And actually, the common denominator there is, oh, people.
Yeah. And I
It,
think that's the key. I think we almost swap it around. We're hoping that the tech companies and that tech in general brings us solutions to our problems. Well, it's only a solution if it's better than what we had before. Now, for some of the basics of tech, it is. It's faster, it's more accurate, it's scalable, and we're using all that stuff, and I've been using it for some time. It's enormous now, but as accountants, we now we've got our compliance covered pretty much. We've had compliance software in there for years. We're now able to utilize robotics and automation to improve some of the reconciliation processes and the repetitive processes. So that bit ticks about that works for us. Now we want to do is we want to move our business forward. We want to have different sort of conversations with our clients. We want to explore different opportunities. That's the area where it then starts to struggle because it's not an it's almost the tech that's working is keeping accountants in their box. And for increasing number of accountants, we want to grow from that now. We want to move from that, and that's where it becomes a challenge. Take CRM systems as a case in point. An area where accountants have always struggled is communication with their clients, and the more clients you have, now on the one hand, we've got more communication routes than we've ever had before. With all our devices and all the different apps we can use and all the different ways of communicating, but communication with clients is still an issue. It's not fixed. So you should be using your CRM system better, you should be doing this better, you should be doing that better. Well, hang on, what would happen if I just stopped using my tech? If I just for a moment said, whoa, 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 there's some basics. I need my laptop, probably need the internet, right? But so many times you talk to accountants, they go, oh, it's so much easier when I just used to use my diary, or so much easier when I just used to write these notes down. All right, so why don't you do that for a week? What it feels like we're at the tech side of it is almost out of we're on a slalom run. It's out of control.
right. We're not in control anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If we turned this around, if we went back to our tech companies and said, whoa, 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 let me tell you what I now need. Right? And one thing I need my team to be fully utilizing this system. And that's not my job. If you want me to buy your software, it's become your job. Now, the tech company, depending on the size, might tell us to sling a hook. Okay, well, at least we know where we are in the relationship. But it goes back to these smaller firms who will go, well, okay, we'll work with you on that. I think that's where it
Measure
comes in.
the results of installing this tech. Because obviously, the thing that went through my head as you were talking was they're passionate about tech. People in tech are passionate about tech. Accountants, bookkeepers, and SMEs, yeah, they like it, they want it, but they're not passionate about it. And the passion is selling what they've got, but not necessarily providing the solution which we've identified. But I wonder how many of them go back to measure the success of implementation.
Yeah.
And where it's not being delivered. So I know I was talking to somebody about they've got some tech in this. I don't know whether it was CRM based or what, but it was a typical accountant's package and they were not fully utilizing it. Now, what was not made known or was not clear was that they will come in and look at the business to see how you can better use it. Now, that would be a good starting point. And to encourage you to, they could train your people. Would that be a good thing? Would that help? you're right. Once you've gone back to not using it, you'd get a real sense of what's working and what really isn't in your systems. And then being able to ask the provider to actually, we need some help here. The trouble is, you're then paying what you feel might be over the odds, as in, I purchased this, it should work, and it's not working. There might be some dissatisfaction that comes from that. And that's something the tech companies would be well advised to think about, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the companies that we work with, very much one of the new generation of companies, when they're putting together their proposals for their clients, and it's a practice, I'll call it a practice management system that they have, it's a bit
Yeah.
more than that, but they don't have a fixed price, for instance. And part of their onboarding process, in fact, part of their sales process, is to meet with the business, meet with the accountants, first of all, understand their systems, understand their resources, understand the challenges that they have at the moment. And then it's the supplier who takes the responsibility for putting together a business case that goes through how that would be different in their system. And it's not just here's all the features, here's all the benefits. It's actually in hard numbers. This is the difference that it will make. And then the accountant is in a position, and also how not just this is what in theory should happen, but this is how we'll actually do it. This is how we will implement it. This is how we'll get your team on board. This is how we get your clients on board. This is how you hold us accountable if we don't. In other words, it becomes a true business partnership. Now
Like it.
that makes it a long sales process. But the tech companies has recognised this is what we need. This is part of our vision. We want to be long-term partners with our clients. So that starts from, well, not even day one, but from 3, 4 months before day one.
Yes, of
And
course.
so we're not selling them something. We're becoming partners in their business. And to do that, we've got to fully understand what their business is and what the challenges are, and recognise that the challenge isn't just being able to afford our software. It's this implementation, the onboarding, the engagement, all those side of things as well. And I think maybe as accountants, we need to, it's like everything else, we have to stay in control of our own businesses.
Yeah.
And that means staying in control of our relationships, whether they be the client relationships or the supplier relationships. And when we're not, I think we now have to be brave enough to stand up to that and go, no, this isn't really working as well as I wanted it to. And I'm not accepting that that's my problem. I mean, if the firm has said, look, here's, as part of the product, you buy 2 weeks worth of training and it's going to cost you this much, and the firm goes, no, we don't want to pay that, we don't do the training. Fine, that's their fault. They've not engaged in the process. But that's not often where the issue lies these days. Yeah,
Mm.
you see so much software. You were talking there about how much people use it. I can't, when I talk to tech firms, they will often say that they're fully aware that their client base is only using 20% of the product. Yeah,
That's crazy,
so
isn't
they're
it?
paying for 100%, but only using 20% because to use the other 80% has become too hard. Now, they see that in some ways, partly they will say mainly the accountant's fault, either because they've not got time or they're not invested in the training or because their team aren't simply using it. But actually, if it's too hard to do, you should be part of the solution to that, not just go, oh, well, it's your problem. Because it won't be, because eventually the accountant will get mugged off and somebody else will come with a better offer and they'll lose the customer. That's the other thing at the moment, because
Mm.
once the tech's involved in the firm, it's hard to get it out again.
Yeah.
But I
There's
think that world's
attitude in there.
changing. Yeah,
I see that.
we can now go, well, I'll use this year, I'll use this one. Next year, I'll use a different one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's good for us as accountants. But it goes back to what you were saying. As long as we know what our vision is, we know what our plan is, we know what we're trying to achieve, we know what we want to achieve out of the decision, we then flip it around to the supplier in whatever sector they're in and go, okay, so how are you now going to help me do that?
Yeah. Oh, it's a bigger conversation. And as we come to the end of this, Richard, there was about three or four things going through my head right then. So, you have suggested calling in a gentleman who is developing his software stuff, Mark Hill, I think you said.
Yeah, Mark's a good example because he's an accountant and tech, so he sits in both worlds.
Yeah, so I think it would be really interesting to have a chat with him about this. It might be useful to invite, like I said, my AI guy. He had a really nice take on the future of it and how we can integrate it, because there's a lot of fear around tech. I know I've spent years worrying that I'm just gonna something's going to go wrong with it and I'm not going to know how to deal with it, because it's usually the integrations, or as it turns out, my web page recently, I was doing a page on that and it was just a nightmare. WordPress, once you know what you're doing, it's great. But if not, it doesn't work the way you expect Word to work, for example. And there is another potential, which I don't want to get this all into the tech space, but I think if people are interested, it might be useful to invite somebody along from a tech company who,
Mm.
what did you call a practice management system, and to see their viewpoint on it. So we're getting a balance here as to, people who are struggling with the whole tech thing. It's too difficult, there's too much time, it's too big an investment, it's not delivering what they were expecting, it's all the tech company's fault, whatever it is, versus, somebody who works on both sides, Mark, somebody who's dealing with the future. AI is, I can't remember the names, Guy, otherwise I'd say it. And then obviously somebody from the tech. So maybe we can spread that out through the year so that we can get a more balanced view, maybe.
Yeah, I think because the bottom line here is that tech is no different to anything else. We don't have to use it. We should only use it if it makes things better for us.
Yes.
And I think we've fallen into this trap of using tech because we're supposed to use tech. And I know this makes me sound like a dinosaur, but I'm not. It's but my point it's a niche point I'm trying to make. Use tech, you definitely use tech, but only if it makes you world better. And if it's not working, making it better, it ain't ready for you yet, or it's not right, or keep on using a piece of paper until you do. Yeah, if we're being honest, people listening to this now or watching this now, how many of them are still using Excel spreadsheets? Yeah, because they just find it easier. Hey, if it works for you, it works for you. Yeah, now we can spend all day long about how much better it would be if you had tech and AI involved in that and it was doing all the analytics for you and all. I'd get that. But if it's not doing that, it's not doing it. It's making life harder. So it's I think understand what it is that you want to do. Look at how you're doing it at the moment. Is that working most effectively? If it isn't, either bin it or at least let's explore other options. But don't necessarily just keep on going, I need more tech, I need more tech. We do need tech, but only if it makes life better for us humans.
I love that. What a great summary. Thank you so much, Richard. It's been very enlightening, I have to say. It is a big topic. I think we've covered some big topics, and half an hour just isn't enough, is it? So we do need to do some more. But I hope that was really useful, listeners who tune in. And we would love your feedback. Please do comment and send us some feedback on what your thoughts are around this whole world of tech. And until next time, Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you.